Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you making the time to join us for today's webinar. My name is Julie Petty. I work with Seafood Industry Australia, and the purpose of the webinar today is really to give you a rundown on a couple of the traceability programs or projects that we've been running over the last couple of years in partnership with a group called OpenSC. What we'll run through today in this session is a bit of a rundown on what the objective of the projects was. And some of the, I guess, the activities that were undertaken and what we learnt from the projects. One has been concluded and the other we're probably halfway through. So this is an opportunity for you guys to harvest all the learnings that the project team have made along the way. And we'll have lots of time for questions at the end of Alex's presentation as well. Really, again, thank you for making the time to join us today. It is being recorded. If anyone has any concerns with that, please let me know. But we had a number of people express interest in listening in, but weren't able to make the live meeting. And for Alex and the OpenSC's team's benefit, we've got a real mix of people here on the line, including Farmed Abalone. I can see Nick there. Malcolm is there as well. So Malcolm's got Toothfish. Margaret Jewell is our new board member. Hi, Margaret. How are you? And who else have we got there? We've got Phil, who is wild caught tuna, and a couple of representatives from FRDC. So there's a real mix of people who've joined online, and there's probably more. I just can't quite see them with my window there. So, Alex, would you like to begin perhaps with an introduction of who is online from your team? And we can get into the presentation about what the grants were about, but also maybe a brief overview of what OpenSC is and does as well.
Sure. Thanks, Julie. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name's Alex. I'm the implementations manager here at OpenSC, working across all of our seafood supply chains. So working across the northern prawn fleet, or the northern prawn fishery, Patagonian toothfish, Pacific tuna in Fiji, along with a few other smaller projects. I've been with the company now for a few years, and I've been leading all of the grant funding projects that we've been doing with SIA and the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries and Forestry. My colleague is here today, Riza. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. Very nice to see you all. So my name is Reza. I'm a lead solution engineer and architect at OpenSC. So I'm focusing on data side and providing tech-based solution to facilitate traceability and making data available for different purposes, specifically for traceability.
Lovely. Thank you, guys.
Cool, thanks, Riza. I've just shared my screen. Can you see that?
Yep,
Julie?
we've got that up, and it's in presentation mode, so you're good to go. Thank you.
Cool. Well, yeah, thanks for joining us today. The plan for today, as Julie mentioned, we'll do some introductions about who is OpenSC and the projects that we've been working on, and then the first project is all about verifying authentic Australian seafood. That was the first project concluded earlier this year, and then the second project that we're working on is all about regulatory technology and regulatory compliance. So we'll dive into both of those. Julie, would you want to give a quick summary of the grant funding that we've received?
Yeah, so both projects, we were really fortunate. We put in an application with government for a couple of grants that were running in the traceability space, and we were really lucky to be accepted and receive 2 of those. So that's funded this work to date. We have regular reporting back to the department on the findings so far, and thus far, they've been really pleased with some of the outcomes and learnings. We've done a final report back on the first project, particularly with some learnings around getting product into China and some of the, I guess, that project ran over a period with COVID as well. So it was a whole variety of challenges there. And the second one, as I said, we're part of the way through, and it's very much focused on how we can potentially use traceability technologies to reduce regulatory burden for certain export markets. So that's very much been the focus for that second one. But we thought this is an opportunity to give you an overview of both.
Great. Thanks, Julie. I think another one of my colleagues, Phil, has just joined us. Phil, if you're there, if you want to give a quick intro for yourself, and then I'll dive into the content.
Hi everyone, I'm Phil Freeman, Director of Impact at OpenSC, one of the founding team members. Working on seafood for quite a few years now, toothfish, prawns, and Pacific tuna. And looking forward to this share session and questions as they come up later. Thanks.
Thanks, Phil. Cool. So to start off with, OpenSC, who are we? We are a technology and impact-first venture with a lot of expertise, not just in seafood, but across a number of high-impact commodities across the globe. We were co-founded by the World Wildlife Fund and the Boston Consulting Group. And what do? We work at source. So that means, the first mile of complex supply chains to gather a lot of this rich, supply chain data and then move it throughout the other steps of the supply chain and communicate it with the relevant stakeholders. In terms of seafood, we work with Austral Fisheries, we work with Seafood Industry Australia, and we work with Solander, who are based in Fiji. Outside of seafood, we work with Nestle and Nespresso to track a lot of their coffee supply chain. And then we're also doing a project with Sunrise here in Australia as well. And, our platform will become a bit more clear as I work through these two different projects, as there are, a few different themes or flavors of what we're able to do with supply chain data. So the first project, verifying authenticity for traceable great Australian seafood. In terms of the project overview, this was a hands-on pilot to test traceability and anti-counterfeit technology in the Chinese market. So how did we do this? The first step was all about conducting primary research. So it involved doing a lot of research about food fraud. That was a big one. How do Australian producers deal with their products going overseas and dealing with food fraud? And then we also did research with consumers in the Chinese market. The second step of the project was actually getting product into China with a scannable code on it, and we were monitoring all of that scanning data coming from real customers purchasing the product and interacting with the product. And then the last step was all about this digital solution and looking at how we can use it to support Australian producers going overseas to protect their product, prove that it's real, and look at putting together this scaling plan, putting together the report for the department. So this project started back in 2021, and it wrapped up this year. Throughout the period, we had lots of different reports, sharebacks, in order to complete it. Why were we doing this? And I think it's quite obvious. Australian seafood really demands quite a big premium overseas, just based on the Australian origins alone, based on the very clean and green seas. But coming with this premium, there's a really big need to guarantee the authenticity of the product to consumers. And then, with this element of food fraud becoming more and more prevalent, that ability to authenticate becomes even more important. So the two main mechanisms that we're using here to prove Australian seafood is traceability and authenticity. So I think I'm not going to dive into too much detail on some of these slides, but I think the benefits for traceability and authenticity are quite obvious. We want to be able to introduce a commercial incentive to adopt traceability standards. We want to help Australian producers create long-term market access to new or existing markets. We want to protect the high value exports that are coming out of Australia. And then we also want to be able to reduce the burden of entry for Australian producers and help with diversification. We want to help producers be able to reach more markets and receive the premium value from their amazing products. So the project objective was to develop and release a digital and physical experience that allows overseas consumers to verify the provenance and authenticity for traceable Australian seafood products. For the project scope, the first step was all about defining, what does true authenticity mean for Australian seafood exports, to design a pilot solution, and then to put it into practice, do a proof of concept. So it was all about, developing a QR code or something similar, a closed loop authenticity stamp that we could put on the packaging to help combat food fraud and ensure that we had traceability. This was going to be done using the Seafood Industry Australia's Great Australian Seafood Program. And the idea is to design it so it's scalable across the seafood industry. This project was all about doing the proof of concept, designing it, testing our hypotheses, and then, long term, we're looking at how we can scale it, how is it going to be valuable for Australian producers of all different sizes, the big players, the small players, vertically integrated, etc. So in terms of some of the outputs, as I mentioned before, we did a lot of research involving real Australian companies and real Chinese consumers. We designed the surface architecture, we designed our hypotheses and how we were going to test it. And then the second part here was actually designing an actual scannable code, the user interface, and the user experience. These were some of the Australian seafood producers that we interviewed to get an understanding of, their experiences going overseas and how they, can protect their products. So you can see we had a variety of different species, different regions, and different sizes of companies. In terms of, who were we including in the project, in terms of on the consumer side in China, we looked at consumers from large cities, from a very diverse age group, but specifically they were purchasers of seafood, and they had experience using mobile phones in that purchase experience in terms of scanning codes. So what did the solution look like? We worked with Austral Fisheries Glacier 51 Patagonian toothfish products. And the first step was, as you can see here, the packaging on the left. And we worked with a company to develop a specific, the QR code used for WeChat. So WeChat is the primary app used in China, not just for messaging, but they use it for paying bills, booking tickets, social media. It's used for everything. So we developed a WeChat code to be used on the packaging. That scan, once consumers scan that would open up the Great Australian Seafood Program that was built in collaboration with Lava, who have a lot of experience designing, authentication stamps for Australian product going overseas. So it opened up the Great Australian Seafood Program. Consumers were prompted to scan again the Lava ID on the bottom left of the packaging. This would open up this verification screen. So it would show that this product that they were purchasing was authentic. It was a unique product. It had not been scanned before. It was a unique fingerprint or QR code. And then it would take the user or the consumer through the different steps of the provenance information. So which vessel it was caught on, which location it was caught, and what date and where it was processed. And this, based on our research, is the information that consumers really want to know. They want to make sure that it's coming from where a company claims that it's coming from. So this is some more images of what the packaging looked like with the actual toothfish inside. In terms of the pilot, so how do we actually execute this? Almost 2,800 portions of the toothfish were packaged in Perth and shipped to Shanghai. Unfortunately, this was right around the time of COVID-19 lockdowns, and specifically lockdowns in Shanghai. They went through a second wind of lockdowns that had a big impact on how long it took the product to get approval from the port, to get landed in Shanghai, and then where it went. So unfortunately, COVID having many knock-on effects and consequences, we won, but we were still able to get our product into China. We were able to get it in the hands of consumers as well, which was really good. In terms of the results, so we were able to track all of the data coming in through those scans, through the WeChat analytics dashboard. So we had 2.3% scan rate, and in general, a scan rate of 1 to 2% is usually the industry standard for campaigns without additional promotion, and we fit that bucket. We didn't do any additional promotion, and that's a big learning. That's something we would definitely look at doing in the future. We were able to see that users were spending between 6 and 115 seconds on the screen, diving into all different pages of the program, showing that they were exploring the different sections, the recipes, the provenance information, which is all really, really positive. So we definitely got some great learnings from that. In terms of the next step and what we were able to gather from the Lava ID page, that second scanning step, we saw that 13% of users were going through to the second stage. This counterfeit logic has been tested. We had a alerting of a potential issue, but it was deemed to be okay. You can see on the right here, when a consumer actually scans that second code, it uploads a photo into our system on the back end, and it shows the exact location on a map. So we can see where all the different scans are coming from. And, I had a map of China, and it showed all the different scans, which again is really good. So we're getting data that people are scanning, people are interacting with it, which is very positive. In terms of where do we go from here, it was a proof of concept. We got some learnings. In the full report, which we shared back with the department. If anyone is interested in accessing it, please let us know. For the sake of time and trying to fit in, a share back on 2 projects in this session. I don't have the time to dig into all the detail, but we did have a lot of learnings in if we were going to scale this and take this to the next stage, or take this to new species, new producers. These are some of the elements that would need to be implemented in order to have effective, successful technology. So it's all about, the first one is all about industry collaboration. How can we get more people involved? We would look at doing more pilot programs and investing in education around industry and stakeholders for traceability technology. We would look at making sure that the technology is scalable and it can be integrated into the ecosystem. So again, going back to, we don't just want to be working with the big vertically integrated players, right? We want to be developing technology and solutions that can be applicable and relevant to producers and businesses of all sizes, playing in all different parts of the seafood ecosystem. We would look at engaging government further and look towards standardizing traceability. We know that there's a lot of work going on already with GS1 and the GDST standards, but we would look at, how can we help to further that here in Australia. Marketing, of course, is a big part of it. And this is connected with, engaging importers overseas. So to look at, how can we communicate with them the value of this technology and why it's important that they adopt it and work with producers that have this technology. And then lastly, something as a technology company, we're always looking to improve it, right? So we're looking to streamline it, make it more efficient, but also assess the cost of adoption and make it affordable for all the different players that would be interested. In terms of where to next, what does the future of this solution look like? We want to create more noise about it. We want to, showcase it in industry forums, conferences, sessions just like this. But we would also be looking at inviting, more more partners to do more trials, right? So look at, different companies, different species, different supply chains, and trial it in the real world, gather more data, more feedback, so that we can look to continuously improve it. And then the third point here is, how can we bundle it with other digital solutions? And that one is, a RegTech solution, which is what I'm going to talk about now.
Alex,
yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, should we pause there and see if there's any questions at all from the attendees before we jump into the next project?
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, thanks, Julie. It's Grant Rosehorn here. I'm one of the new directors of AIS. So
Okay,
thank you for that, Alex. So the lava that needs to be printed on there, that's unique for every individual pack. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes. So Lava ID,
Yeah.
they do a lot of work with different Australian producers going overseas, and their focus, their specialty is creating these authentication stamps.
Yeah. So it would
Alex,
be. Yeah.
oh,
Sorry.
sorry, I was just going to say, would you mind popping the screen down and then you'll be able to see each other?
Oh,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Thank you.
All right. So the manufacturers would have to have the capability of printing an individual identifier on every pack, similar to a use by date or a packed on date, something similar to that. So it takes a bit of capability. So I presume there's a cost associated with that. So are the producers up for paying for that cost?
Yeah, great question. So Lava ID, they have experience working with a number of different sizes of producers. So they can specialize in that support, right, when it comes to packaging and manufacturing. But yes, in terms of a general partnership working agreement with Lava, they would be. But that's why these grants are so good, because we're able to use that funding to cover any of those additional or unique costs.
Yeah. Okay. Then a further question. So there was a 2% uptake on the first QR code, and then a 13% uptake on the lava code. So I make that about 0.25%. So, and you started off by saying there was a high demand for this, but if it was a really strong pain point, do you think that those numbers might not have been higher? Maybe they've got a high level of faith and trust in their distribution system already, or something. Why they must already have a high level of trust or something, or in the brand or the packaging or something. Would you say that those numbers indicate that, or do you go, no, there really is a strong pain point here?
Yeah, great question. And I think there's a couple points here. So yes, we acknowledge the numbers were not as high as we were hoping, but I think that comes down to two main factors. One, which I mentioned, is we did this campaign without additional promotional support, right? If we were to look at again, we would look at incentivizing scans. So how do we incentivize consumers to scan? We can look at scan to win, scan to unlock more recipes, scan to unlock discounts. So that's definitely a factor. COVID did unfortunately have an impact on how much product went to retail stores versus food service. So unfortunately, quite a bit of product ended up going to food service due to COVID. And as you can imagine, busy chefs, busy cooks, they don't have the time to interact and scan with packaging. But the second point is, and the reason why we did this is because Glacier 51 did have a very specific need for a solution like this, because they actually found counterfeit packaging and counterfeit Glacier 51 product in China. It was the identical packaging, but it was with a fraudulent product, right? So, and that was one of the reasons why this project came about, because we understood from the consumer a producer going overseas that there was a real need. So we're on our way to working towards understanding more about that demand, and trying to solve this problem for producers. We understand that on the consumer side, scans weren't as high as we would have liked, but it's definitely something that we looked at in the final report and how we can improve that going forward.
Yep.
Thanks
Okay,
so much, Brendan. Thank you. Malcolm, sorry, I just saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks, guys. And just as a reminder, I've worked in the toothfish side of things opposite Austral as well, and I've met you guys, I think, before. Just a couple of quick questions. The focus that you did, and I think you answered it in the last question. Actually, this was a focus mainly on the China. You talked about WeChat and that side of things. So, do you envision that's going to expand globally, or is there less of a requirement because of why it's been done for China?
Yeah, so thanks for the question, Malcolm. So yeah, we looked at China originally because number one, that specific issue that Austral was having with their Glacier 51 in China, but also because we understand that quite a lot of Australian product goes to China because they're able to receive and demand quite a premium price. And I think we saw in the news today that they've finally opened back up to Western rock lobsters. So I'm sure there's many people celebrating about that. But the vision for digital solutions like this is to be global for sure. We would look at other markets, other industries, other platforms to leverage. WeChat is very specific. I think ideally we would be looking at countries where there's more of a global platform that we can leverage. We definitely had a lot of good learnings from WeChat and how to operate in markets where there's a big language barrier and English is not the primary language. So definitely something that we've been reflecting on.
Right, thanks. Can I just quickly ask my second question? Obviously, the Glacier 51 product is an end product for Austral, and the rest of their product, I expect, like ours, goes through and gets processed somewhere down the supply chain. Have you guys thought about whether is there a continuum that, and I'll put it out the way we do it, we sell our fish, say, to a processor in the US or maybe China. Is there a tracking that can go from what we're putting on, for example, our box, to what they end up putting on their end labeling?
Yeah. Again, good question. We haven't dug too much into those knock-on effects or the processing that happens further down the supply chain, and once it reaches third-party processors. We were very much focused on companies that have a consumer-facing brand. That's where we wanted to start. That's where we thought we would be able to have the most impact and get the main learnings right. We understand that the majority goes to wholesale and bulk and selling. So again, it's something that we would look at in future proof of concepts, future trials. But as you can imagine, as the product touches so many different hands, it's going to involve so many different more stakeholders and players.
Great, thanks for that, and good luck with the lobster, guys. I reckon that'll be interesting for you guys. Thanks.
Oh, you're on mute, Julie.
Yeah, no, I just realized that my face just expressed that. Sorry. Is there any more questions for Alex? Otherwise, we'll jump across and start getting into the next project. It's got a number of different trials that we are looking at, and we've identified a number of potential opportunities across different markets, looking at how RegTech burden could potentially be improved. So we might jump into that one. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, thanks, Julie. So changing theme and flavor slightly, we're moving into regulatory compliance and regulatory technology. So why this came about? So the second grant funding that came out of the department's traceability program was all about regulatory compliance. So again, from our research, from our different interactions from different Australian seafood producers, we've come to understand that there are a lot of regulatory processes that can be quite a burden for different different players, and it can be struggling to meet all the different compliance obligations. So we wanted to look at a digital end-to-end traceability and verification. So kind of building on what we just presented, and incorporating a regulatory compliance technology element. So if you're a producer and you're looking to go to a new market, or you're already in the EU or America and regulations constantly changing, it's very time consuming to stay on top of it. It can be very, very, very costly to stay on top of it, and very resource intensive to have, people and team members dedicated purely just to tracking the different amendments and changes in compliance across the globe. So we want to, reduce the time and the cost of compliance administration. We want to empower Australian producers to gain access to new markets, but also retain access that they already have. And then it's all about trying to increase efficiencies while regulations continue to increase and become more difficult. So here's a good image of the OpenSC platform. So you can see along the bottom here, we ingest data from a number of different steps across the supply chain. We're then able to analyze this data through processing, the claim verification, chain of custody verification, and then we're able to share it. So that last project was a really good example of this, consumer experience where consumers are able to scan a code and learn all about the product. We're also able to, share the data in different dashboards and different business environments. This top part, data sharing, this is where we see a RegTech solution fitting in, right? So it's all about how can we help producers collect and present the data and the information that they need to pass audit reports, regulatory reports for EU, for China, Japan, etc., but also for here domestic, because we know that the big retailers here, they have some of the most stringent regulatory requirements, even compared to some of the global markets. So phase one was all about, this project scoping and the definition. We had to recruit partners for this, so it wasn't just working with one supply chain like the previous project. We had to have a number, which I'll come to in the next slide. A big part of phase one was all about researching the state of regulatory compliance at home and abroad. Then once we recruited, even before we started the recruitment, we were doing a lot of interviews with seafood business. So we wanted to learn about, their processes here, all the different steps that are required, the documentation, the reports required to collect that regulatory compliance information, and how they dealt with products and shipments going to the EU, America, China, etc. And we also interviewed some of the Australian retailers to get an understanding of their requirements. Part of this was also to receive some initial supply chain data from our project partners and start to analyze it and to start to map it and map their supply chains. In terms of our project partners, these are the 5 that signed up. So we had Karumba banana prawns and Skull Island tiger prawns from the Northern Prawn Fishery, Glacier 51 coming back for a second go, Brolos from Western Australia for rock lobster, and then we also had the Southern Bluefin tuna, 2 of the companies there representing the industry association. So a good mix, again, a good variety of size, different species, and different catch methods, which is also important to note. So in terms of designing the solution, I'm going to jump into a different tab. Julie, let me know if you can see this okay.
Yeah, it's just loading at the moment, so that's okay. It'll be there shortly, hopefully. Yep, cool. So we can see that, but you'll have to zoom in a lot.
Yeah, that's okay. Do that. Cool, so this is the solution architecture that we built from the outputs of our research in phases 1. So
Alex, is anyone meant to be able to read that? Because otherwise you'll have to zoom in more.
I'll zoom in as I go through all the different sections.
Oh, okay. Sorry, my apologies. I'll leave you alone.
No, that's all good. That's all good. I just wanted to show what the overview looks like. So Solution architecture. Again, you'll see there are 3 different sections, very similar to what our platform is. Capture and ingesting data at the top here, analyze and extracting data in the middle, and then this last bit, share and report. And you can see share and report actually has, the most number of solution components. That's what you're looking at here inside of all of these boxes, solution components. Before I dig into them, you'll see along the bottom here, we have all the different steps of the supply chain, catch and harvest, through to export and import. And you'll see along the left here, we have all the different areas of regulatory compliance and some of the different bodies, industries that that producers will have to be complying with. On the right here, you'll see that each solution component has got a number, and we've identified which supply chain is going to be relevant to those components. And that's important because one of the key factors here in this project was that we wanted to look at the solution components that were going to be the most relevant to the most number of supply chains, the most number of species, because that's what we want to develop solutions that are going to be relevant to the biggest number of seafood producers. We don't want to be working on components that are only going to be super niche, only focused on one species, right? We want to be developing solutions that can be relevant to a wide number of people. So in terms of some of the solution components that came out of our research and we thought could be providing value to producers, again, I touched on standardization of data in the previous project, and one component could be transforming supply chain data to GDST standards. We know that this is a topic that is becoming more and more prevalent, and it's going to become even more important for producers to comply with in the near future. So is there a way that we could automate that, because we know it's going to be a very, a time-consuming task. So is there a way we can automate it, streamline it, make it a little more efficient for producers? Some of the other ones here, we know that different markets require catch certificates, health certificates, certificates of origins. Sometimes, again, these can be very tedious tasks, time consuming to fill in. So is there a way that we can, integrate with your systems or analyze your processes and just automate those reports and pre-fill them and get them generated in a matter of seconds rather than a few hours? Some other examples here, how can we automate production reports? How can we automate traceability reports? We know for America, they have, if you're involved in species relevant to the seafood import monitoring program, there are specific documentation required for that. Is there a way that we can automate some of that work? So that's an idea or that is the solution architecture. And now I'll jump back into the presentation. So these are the 9 components that we identified from our research and from our interviews with our partners. So what was the next step? The next step was to start to analyze each of these components and assess them to see if they were actually, in fact, going to be valuable and be relevant. The first step here was to identify the pain points of the current situation, what kind of gains would be brought by the component, and then what are the relevant data and systems required in order to implement a component like this. The next step was to actually assign each component a score. And we did this by going through 3 different criteria. The first one is the level of digitization required for implementation of the components. So a very good score would be that it requires no digitization, that we are able to do it with fully paper-based traceability record keeping. A low score would have been that it really requires a high level of digitization and end-to-end traceability already in place. So, coming to the table with a lot of work done already. The second point here is transferability and scalability between supply chains, which I mentioned earlier. We want to be doing components that are relevant to all supply chains or the most number of supply chains. The third criteria here is what kind of impact this is going to have on supply chain operations. And again, what we're looking for is eliminating manual and repetitive tasks. A low score would be that, this component, it already exists as an automated process. So then we get an average score here. Section C, again, reiterating that we want to be doing components that are going to be relevant to a large number of supply chains. So I'm not going to go through all 9 of these assessment criteria because we'd be here all day, but we do have a summary. So here are the first 5 components, and you can see we do have scores varying. You can see here the one for CCSBT, because that is relevant only to supply southern bluefin tuna and their catch documentation scheme. It wasn't going to score very high. On the other hand, we know that a lot of Australian product is going to the EU, and this, we know that the EU can be very tricky to deal with, and as a result, the one for the EU scored quite high. The last 4 components, again, we see different variants here. The one for China and Japan, again, we didn't think it was going to bring that much value, just to automate one of the certificates, so it scored quite low compared to that the seafood import monitoring program for America, we think could be of quite high value. So phases 1 and 2 was very much research, recruitment of the partners, and learning all about how they go about regulatory compliance when dealing with shipping product overseas. The third part of the project is a trial. So you've seen the solution components, you've seen the ones that scored highly. Now, how are we actually going to trial it? What does this mean? How are we going to implement it, and why? So these are the 2 components that we have identified as going to be, bringing the most value and the most interest, and then we've partnered them up with a supply chain. Luckily for component number 1, we've got 2 supply chains that are involved in going to Europe, so we are able to explore what a trial would look like for Glacier 51 and for GFC with their rock lobster. Again, prior to this presentation, with China being closed, Burlos were looking for different markets to explore, and the EU is one that definitely stood out. So they are looking at getting more product into the EU, which is good. And then we have tiger prawns. So all shrimp species are on the seafood import monitoring program list, and therefore they are in scope. So in terms of component number 1 for the EU, again, I won't spend too much time on this for the sake of time, but we can see that, in terms of transferability, so before I dig into it, traceability report generation, what does that mean? So we understand that based on our interviews with our project partners, getting a shipment of product into the EU can require a lot of paperwork and a lot of information. They can sometimes require a traceability report going back all the way from where and which vessel the product was caught, all the way, and every step that the product goes through of the supply chain. The EU can require the traceability information for that. And for some of our stakeholders or our partners, this can be a really time-consuming process going back through every step, multiple different Excels, multiple different documents and programs to collect that information. So we're looking at how can we automate that process, and we think that this would be something that would save them a lot of time. It could have a big impact on the supply chain operations or the admin operations, and then we think it could be relevant because, as I'll get to here, we think that we trial it with the EU, but this could have applicability and relevance to other markets that require traceability reports. So these are the main reasons. Again, so just explain, current process requires a lot of manual effort to go back through all the stages. We want to look at automating that process. So it could be as simple as if we have Jim, logistics officer or export clerk at a company, if they are able to just search a pallet number of a product or a shipment going to the EU, and they're automatically able to see the full traceability data, that could save them a lot of time. We also think that this could be relevant for providing information for audits, and we think that the foundation of this component could be replicated quite easily for other report generation and for other markets. In terms of component number 2, this is the one for America. So we think that again, there are a big number of species. I think it's 13 species with over 1,000 unique species on that list. So we do think that this could be relevant for a lot of supply chains. And again, we've learned that it can be a really complicated process for especially smaller businesses or ones who don't have the product segregated as it moves through the supply chain to collect the information that is required for the SIMP worksheet. So the focus here is allowing users to generate all the required documents and all the information without having to manually check and import the data. So again, from our learnings, from our research, we understood that producers who source from a number of different smaller companies and smaller vessels, where the traceability information has the potential to break down, they can really struggle with tasks such as this. So because the SIM program requires all of this data, every step that the product goes through before it reaches America, we want to look at how can we help producers to automate some of these steps. So there was a lot of information. I'm going to pass over to Riza, who is going to be able to talk about the data side of this, because that's what we're working with here, right? It's all about extracting data from the supply chains from different sources and then presenting it in a format that is acceptable by the right body. So I'll hand over to Riza now, who is driving all the technical side of this.
Sure, thanks, Alex. So we all know that we all know about the importance of data and information for efficiently running processes and businesses. The capability to effectively ingest, transform, and analyze data from diverse sources such as social media, ERP system, Excel reports, APIs, emails, etc., is essential for the management of tasks and operations. So the topic of traceability can be extensive and complex, often tailored to a specific product, even within a singular industry such as seafood. So it's reasonable to assume that many companies in this sector have invested considerable effort in collecting and digitizing data for from various stages, including catch, storage, and processing, because you need to report to regulatory parties or running a business efficiently. So a good amount of data has been captured. That's assumption. So automating the data collection process from multiple sources and preparing it for various applications such as form generation or claim verification could provide substantial benefit to a broad segment of the Australian seafood industry and NSIA members. So we decided to focus on these two. Now, one of the questions is that how such solution can be reusable or different products for different processes. You know very well that running a business can be totally different even when you're working on a specific product, because businesses are run by different people, by different logics. So to facilitate the data extraction and transformation for different purposes, it's essential to establish a master data source or single source of truth that integrate different types of data into a unified comprehensive format, which facilitate, generate application of data for different purposes. So if you're using the data, traceability data for SIM or exporting to US, it might be 50%, 60% reusable for EU or for rest of the world. And it will be a good practice for both members and for, solution providers like us. By utilizing advanced technologies, we aim to optimize the data ingestion process to significantly decrease manual labor and reducing the likelihood of errors, human error, and data-related errors. This centralized data repository will not only improve data accuracy, but also enables the efficient completion of form in various formats, as explained, and ultimately enhancing decision-making and operation effectiveness. So the implementation of this solution will unlock considerable values, ensuring that our team have prompt access to the information they require and help partners to understand the importance of technology, specifically data automation for different purposes, specifically for traceability.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Reza. So in terms of next steps, this project started in 2023, halfway through 2023. So we're just over 1 year into the project, and we are actually halfway through the trial right now. So we've been working with Austral and GFC to do some technical sessions led by Reza to really get a good understanding of their processes and systems, right? So now that we have that information, Reza is going to actually start building those solution components very soon. This trial will take us through to the end of the year. And part of this trial is to do a first iteration, share that back to the partners, to the actual logistics officers and export clerks and documentation managers, get their feedback, and then do another iteration of the solution so that we can improve it. 2025 will be focused on the final report and the deliverables that the department requires, but included in this will most likely be doing more sharebacks like this. So please stay tuned. Please, if you're interested to learn more, reach out or definitely attend the sessions that we'll be having later in the year. I think the first part of this project was all very much research, recruitment, and getting a good understanding of the processes when it comes to regulatory compliance. But right now is the really interesting part, right? So we're actually doing the trial just like we did with the previous project, and doing the proof of concept, actually working with real data from real supply chains and real companies, and looking at how we can improve their systems, right? So yeah, thanks for your time. Thanks for attending. Happy to stick around for another 8 minutes and answer any questions. But yeah, definitely stay tuned, and yeah, follow up with us or attend to the ones next year so we can let you know how the trial went.
Yeah, thank you so much, guys, for the presentation. That was great. Grant, I see you've got your hand up. We'll jump across to you if that's okay.
Yeah, no, thanks. And another good presentation. Thank you. So have the regulators themselves got any incentive to streamlining, improving things, reducing costs? And, could we rely on them more to make the regulations and the systems associated with it more streamlined or not?
It's a really, do you mind if I have first crack? Okay, thank you. That's a really good question, Grant, and it's something that we've been bringing up. So there's a number of different traceability related advisory groups that have been set up by the department and government, where they're looking at how can we improve adoption of traceability tech, that kind of thing. One of the things that we've been harping on about is that, well, it's great that you've put the funding in place, but then we need to try and help drag that through the whole supply chain. And that's not just about educating our people, it's about also, I guess, providing those opportunities and making the departments and regulators aware of the gaps within their own systems as well. We see, for example, huge variation just in manual versus electronic data collection just across the jurisdictions. So there's a lot, you're exactly right, there's a lot that can be done at that end as well. But Alex, I'll let you jump in.
No, look, I think you answered it great, and I think the more that regulators do to streamline it, I think the better, right?
Yeah.
I think that's something that we're all wishing for, yeah, because it's super complex. It's really confusing. I think we learned a lot of the main pain points from the producers in phase one. So I think, yeah, the more that regulators can do to help and assist, I think the better.
Yeah, that's great. Does that help answer your question at all, Grant? I'm sorry, we don't have a definite response there.
Yeah, no, it would be just some governments are, in some areas they're quite proactive in some of this stuff.
Yes.
In other areas they're not. So
yeah. And huge variation between. Yeah.
I think
just a follow-up question. Is anyone using blockchain technology to facilitate this?
This is an example of that, I guess.
Yeah, okay. So it's based on blockchain. Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, this is Leslie Austral for sure. This is blockchain technology. But just point out that a lot of the documentation that we're using is an importing country requirement as well. So as we work through traceability, we've got to understand that the importing country is also asking for this information. So we can't really change things, but we can try and streamline it with this traceability.
Thank you, Leslie.
Yeah. Riza, I saw you had your hand up. Did you want to add anything?
So Grant, thanks for your question. Although some funds, support may not come from government, but I have seen a lot of potential because I recently joined OpenSC 4 or 5 months ago. But by looking at the data and what we have in hand for traceability, I see how much value it can add to operation for different reasons. For downgrade, for storage, for sorting. Those values can also be unlocked if the data is captured properly, not only for traceability and claim verification, but also for operation and operation management and operation improvement. So it's not very easy to look at the ROI of such project, but in the long run, definitely it can add a lot of value based on what I observed.
Yeah.
I think to add on to that, what we've asked OpenSC as a part of this project to provide with the final reporting is some information after the trials about what has been the value proposition, the return on investment to the particular business around the implementation of this kind of solution. And not just a value, like a monetary number, but an actual example of this is how it's used it. These are the alternative ways or methods that this could be implemented throughout their business. Whether it's like you say, there's better, there's a lot less time spent doing audit preparation, or they're now eligible for an online or remote auditing kind of program because they have these systems in place. So it might not, the value proposition, depending on the particular product and supply chain, may not necessarily just, it might not be as specific as this food fraud happening with the brand in China. I think we have the opportunity through this to look at how we can use and leverage this data in this system much more effectively across an entire business ecosystem.
Yeah. Cool.
Is there any other questions at all? Oh yeah, I've got another one. Sorry, I can see a hand, but I'm not sure who that is.
Giovanni.
Oh, hello.
Giovanni.
Hello. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. So question is regarding the data and data entries and data collection.
Yep.
As we know, when you collect the data, it's all to do with the first step. What data you're collecting and how accurate is the data in regard the whole processing and data analysis and all of that.
Yeah.
With the project, or do you have any steps when you verify the data that's being entered at the first level, just for accuracy purpose and being
great
validated?
question. Thank you. It's one of my questions too. Who wants to jump on that one?
If you don't mind, Alex. So that's a very good question, Giovanni. So you know better than me that putting the right system or mechanism in place to collect the data can take months, if not years, till you're happy with the data. So normally, one of the things that OpenSC we do is to identifying the critical time events and critical data point that we need to collect to satisfy the standards, the highest level of standards, regardless of the type of regulation. But again, for some use cases, you may not need all of them. But for this specific project, we skip that data collection. We assume the data is already collected, even in a manual log sheet, which is digitized in an Excel format, and we take care of that from there. So the first part, although it's the biggest challenge and most important part, but we assume, because again, it's on the company, and it's vary from one company to another one, or from one product to another one. We start from ingestion, not collection. Means we assume data is collected, converted into a digital format, which is simply Excel or CSV file, and then we put logic in place to check. Okay, for example, if the data format is correct, if it makes sense, And then if so, then we continue with implementing the logic. Okay, grab this data, combine it with the other data to be able to extract the information or prepare a form for different purposes. But definitely,
I think in addition to that too, obviously blockchain is around tracking the paper trail, the electronic trail of data. Often people find that they need to pair that with an investigation or something like that in market as well to do like the physical verification as well, whether that's having data loggers in your cold chain that allows you to have, you're pulling that real-time information back around any variance in temperature in the cool chain, or it could be prawns, for example, do and Barramundi both do sampling with another technology provider, looking at isotope testing, that kind of thing for in market, making sure that the product is actually theirs as well. So, is there any other questions at all? Did anyone need to have a better look at the 9 opportunities that Alex's team identified? I just noticed we flicked through that quite quickly. We'll be able to circulate the slide deck to everyone after this meeting anyway, but happy to provide some additional detail if need be. Okay, well, right on time, people. Well done, all of us. I love it when a meeting either ends early or is on time. So that's fantastic. If there's no further questions, we might wrap. Again, thank you so much for joining us. I hope this was useful. Please do reach out to Alex or I after the session if you have any additional questions, you'd like further clarification or any information about anything at all. I'll be able to circulate, Alex, if it's all right, the presentation along with your contact email with all of our attendees. And the recording will be up on the website relatively shortly for people to access if you then want to forward it around to any of your contacts who you think might be interested. Thank you again and have a wonderful weekend, everyone. Hope you have a cracker.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Julie. Thanks, all.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.